This is episode 51 with Daniel DeBaun from DefenderShield.
Every ounce of your being is made up of molecules of energy vibrating at different frequencies that determine your experience here on planet Earth.
This podcast's intention is to inspire you to elevate the vibration of your energy for yourself and for all of us. This is The Elevator.
Hop on in and ride into the ethers with Britt and Tara of Elevate the Globe.
We can take actions and we can reduce the environmental exposures that are disrupting our bodies, the stress that is occurring in our bodies, simply by doing some practice stuff. So to answer your question, most of the stuff's got to operate to actually produce something. So all the things you plug into the wall, you're fine. However, things that you can do that we haven't talked about is when you have a laptop, don't use the Wi-Fi. Get an Ethernet connection.
So before we get into this amazing episode is sponsored by our 528 Academy. So we are so excited to share with you a little bit more about it, especially for all of our new listeners. 528 Academy is our spiritual membership community where we align with the astrology every season, and we really curate meditations and Kundalini yoga and recipes, a book club, and we do live new or full moon gatherings. We also talk about spiritual concepts, and this is really becoming a Kundalini yoga, meditation, and spiritual resource and a massive hub. So at this point, we have so many meditations, so many yoga classes, so many kriyas, and we're adding more and more content every single season, every single week. And it's really a place to form a community around this stuff to really keep you accountable, to keep up your daily practice, to really stay in these high vibrations. And it's helped us so much. It has helped so many of our community members. And it's really like your spiritual gym membership.
Yeah, if you're not in the Academy already, we would love for you to join us in this growing community. And we'll have a link in the show notes to the 528 Academy, but we also have a link in our bio on our Instagram at Elevate the Globe. And we just finished our 5-day Raise Your Vibration Challenge. And so many people have joined the 528 Academy to continue on with us and to really form deeper relationships with the community that they've already formed with this great big energy that we created all together. So it's super fun to be part of a spiritual community. Like we've talked about, it's very important during this day and age to have that support and have people around you that understand kind of what you're going through with all your meditations and your lifestyle. So we love this Academy. It's our baby. It's our favorite thing that we do. So aside from the podcast, I mean, there's not really a favorite.
Oh, and Rise Up and Instagram and the book we're writing.
I know. Anyway, so we hope to see you join us over there. And now we'll get on into the show with Daniel DeBaun, and we hope you enjoy.
We're so excited for you to listen. So make sure to screenshot your favorite part as you're listening and tag us on Instagram. And we're so excited to get your feedback and see what you guys really liked and took away from this episode and repost and share.
Yeah, and anything that you've implemented from this show.
Right?
Yeah.
So many good tips.
Yes.
So enjoy.
So welcome back to The Elevator. We are here with Daniel DeBaun, who is the inventor of DefenderShield, the most effective EMF radiation protection technology for mobile devices that has ever been developed. And he's also a highly regarded author of the book Radiation Nation, The Fallout of Modern Technology. He's an industry consultant, a writer, a speaker, and a frequent guest on radio and TV programs discussing addressing EMF health issues. So we are so excited and honored to have you here today with us. Daniel, welcome.
Thank you so much, Britt and Tara. I really appreciate you inviting me on. I really think we have a lot to share with your listening audience, so I'm excited to get started.
Awesome. We are too. Yeah, this is really a subject that we've been, learning about as we've kind of been learning in general over the years, but we really want to dive into it deeper. And it's really important to us to understand this stuff and to really share it with our audience. So it's very exciting. Yeah. Okay. So we always ask all of our guests to just share a little elevator pitch. So we'd love to hear from your words just a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Alrighty. I'm in my 60s, so I've been around a little bit. Starting in the telecommunications business, believe it or not, I spent 30 years analyzing technologies that were introduced into the Bell system. And I used to write standards for the Bell system for technologies to be introduced. So I'm very familiar with electromagnetic radiation because, in fact, I used to have the laboratories and testing facilities to ensure the integrity of electronics that were introduced in the network. I left that kind of space maybe 10 years ago or so, about 6-7 years ago. My sons were visiting me. They have their laptops on their lap, probably 3-4 hours during the vacation, which is irritating because you want to talk to them, and all they have their heads in the laptops. And my wife says, "I want grandchildren." And I thought about it a little bit, and I said, "Wait a minute. The strength of those signals can't be anything that's dangerous." And so I said, well, I'll look into it a little bit. So I did a little bit of research on the medical side, and lo and behold, there was a plethora of sort of information about the potential dangers of electromagnetic radiation, the devices around us that potentially can harm us. So I built them something to help them protect, because I couldn't find it in the marketplace. I built it, and they started using it. Their friends wanted to use it. And all of a sudden, I was in the business of developing shielding products for devices. I actually wasn't sure, but I took that and I said, well, I'll build a company, and I'll start a company, and I'll see if I can sell some of these things. And it turned out that we began selling immediately, interestingly enough, to Europe more than the US. It seemed like Europeans were more knowledgeable about the potential dangers of the devices around us. And so we started selling, and today we have a fairly thriving business. In between all that, I sort of got frustrated because the research community wasn't talking to the medical community. The medical community wasn't talking to the scientific community. And I wrote a book called Radiation Nation, and I tried to get it so if you read it, even the most inexperienced layperson would be able to understand to some extent what this is all about. So that's actually how I got started in electromagnetic radiation. And today, I'm an expert, a world-renowned expert, actually. I'm invited throughout the world to chat about these kinds of things. And oh, by the way, girls, I don't have grandchildren yet.
Well, Tara here is still on the market.
Oh, Britt. Oh, man.
I love it.
I mean, I love how it was birthed out of just protecting your own family and a wish from your wife to have grandchildren. And now you're helping the world, That's really cool.
Yeah, that's what actually started it. And what I really found was the industry itself, the community and the technology industries were not that familiar with the potential dangers. Yet, when I looked at the research, it was amazing how strong and powerful it was. At this point, I like to give you an analogy. When I was probably 12 years old, I used to smoke cigarettes because I wanted to be a big man. And it turned out that, believe it or not, many, many, many years ago when I started, the research side, the scientific side of the medical industry knew there was direct links between cancer and smoking cigarettes. But nobody when I was 12 was remotely aware that these kinds of things could be potentially dangerous for you. Of course, I quit. I never really ever did smoke heavily or for that matter, consistently. But it's 30 some odd years ago, 40 years ago, it was known that there was direct links to cancer, smoking cigarettes, and the general population didn't know it. That's sort of like what's going on in the electromagnetic radiation space. I really think that I know for sure the research side knows the breakdown of a cell, the impact to the system's body functions, and the long-term debilitating characteristics that may occur for the body. Yet, in general, we don't know about it. Hopefully, we're going to get more familiar with this over time.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it makes so much sense. And we'll talk more about it. But I know that there, is a lot of industries that are not wanting this stuff to get out there to the general population, like the communications industries. And so it's very important for us to be educated and do our own research and to understand this stuff. Especially with our audience, so many listeners are really into eating healthy food and doing yoga and meditation and drinking clean water. But we really have to look at, these other things that could be affecting our health that are more of the silent, unseen things that are out there. So yeah, this is really cool that we're bringing more awareness and that your company is really creating products to help people to protect them.
Yeah, it turns out, Britt and Tara, that it is really amazing how there is a huge multi-trillion-dollar industry that is creating incredible technology for us to use every day. Yet they somewhat are naive about the impacts it has. In fact, what's really interesting to the point you just made, which I think is really, really important, you're the one who controls your environment. You can't expect somebody else to do that for you. You own your lifestyle, your eating habits, your environmental habits. All those things is things you own, and you really shouldn't be looking for others to protect you. I'll give you an example. There are technology standards for the cell phones you use every day, and they were designed to protect you, and of course they don't. But there is a government facility, FCC, that does that for you. Well, it turned out very recently, within the last few years, the FCC approved the use of new technology called 5G, fifth generation technology. And what they did, the guy who approved it, the chairman, was a fellow by the name of Tom Wheeler. Tom Wheeler had been an industry expert for probably 40 years. He started as a representative for the wireless telephone companies. He ran the CTIA. He ran the industry conglomerate that lobbied the government and the press at large. And so that man, who actually was on the side of the service providers, ended up on the side of protecting us. And he just approved 5G technology, which is totally untested, completely untested on humans. And so if you think the federal government, the FCC, is going to protect you, you're wrong.
Yeah, there's been a lot about talk about 5G, and I'd love to go into that. But just in case anyone that's listening doesn't know what EMFs are, could you explain that in your own words? Like, what is an EMF? And are there different types of EMFs?
Yeah, I'd love to. It turns out that I worked in Bell Labs quite a number of years ago, and I'm not going to tell you how many years ago.
Not required.
And I had this mainframe computer that was 500 feet away from me. It generated a lot of electromagnetic radiation in many, many forms, but it was 500 foot away from me. Fast forward to today, in my hand, I have a cell phone as powerful as the mainframe 500 feet away from me. And now I have it on my hand. It still emits stuff that's dangerous, and it's now touching my body. So all of a sudden, this technology that been evolving around us for the last 50, 100 years is now really becoming very, very close to us. So that's one dynamic that's going on. And when it's close to you, what is it that we have to worry about? Well, there's like two kinds of things you need to worry about. The first is there's a connection that occurs between your cell phone and a tower, a cell tower, that's 3, 4, 5 miles away from you. And when you dial someone and call them to talk to them, your friends, it connects. So that's a electromagnetic radiating field. It's a radio frequency / microwave signal that's touching the receivers at the cell tower. That is what is referred to as an omnidirectional signal. That means it's being transmitted, and it's like a tiny little ball that gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it hits the tower. So it's a huge set of pulsing signals that are touching the tower while it's hitting your head. That's true for laptops. It's true for computers, your tablets, all the devices we have that we so readily use that makes our lives so convenient also are all transmitting this RF Wi-Fi. When you use your Wi-Fi or when you use your Bluetooth that's coming out of your cell phone or your tablets, they're all emitting signals to connect and make those communications work. So that's one kind of emissions that's coming out of the technology. The other kind is, when you plug something in a wall, electricity runs and it powers up your hairdryer, powers up your toaster. All the electronic devices you have in the house run on power. That's what's called AC, alternating current, at 60 cycle. In other words, there's a electromagnetic radiation signal that's being generated as a byproduct of your devices operating. And those, when they're close to your body, can also be dangerous. So those are the two forms, the radio frequency / microwave, and the other is the extreme low frequency stuff.
Got it. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So let me explain something that may help also your audience to understand. When you have a microwave oven and you take a piece of meat and you put it inside, there is a microwave signal at about 2.3 gigahertz. Just remember 2.3. It's a oscillating a signal at 2.3 gigahertz. It heats up the water between the cells. The cells start oscillating, and ultimately they cook the meat. A Wi-Fi signal or a cell connection is around 2 gigahertz, almost the exact same frequency, but a much less power level. But yet, it's a microwave oven. So, a microwave oven signal. When you put a cell phone to your head, the standards lets it heat up by 2 degrees. Why? It's a thermal transmitting signal. It heats stuff up, just like it does in a microwave.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Britt's over here. We're both over here making really yucky faces because we didn't think about it. Like it's like a mini microwave in your hand because we don't like the microwave. Britt's like, I haven't used a microwave in years.
Yeah, I heard a long time ago about just like the radiation or, whatever people call the microwave signals. And I just haven't used one ever since because it just made sense to me. But I feel like a lot of people do still use microwaves. And so specifically for microwaves, is there anything else that you could share to kind of help people understand why it could be harmful?
A microwave oven, a microwave, an RF signal, the one and the same. What makes it dangerous is there's two things that occurs to the body when you're exposed to that. The first thing that happens is that the signal can touch the cell. And when it touches the cell, the body's the body reacts, and the cell starts weakening, and then all of a sudden the cell can break down, and stuff can fall in. It's calcium that can go inside the cell. Stuff builds up inside the cell as a result of that, and what happens is the cell can be mutated or it can be DNA damaged. So there's a mechanical breakdown of the cell when you have close exposures to these signals that you need to be aware of. And by the way, if the other thing that happens is there's body system functions that are disturbed from these signals. And so when you're trying to sleep and you have a cell phone literally right next to your head, a foot away on your little table next to the bed, that's screwing around with your melatonin. It's the process of creating the melatonin is being disrupted by the signals, and you may have problem going to sleep. And so there's the cell breakdown that can occur, and there is the processes of the body that can be disrupted, which can have a debilitating effect on the body. And by the way, when you are exposed to these kinds of things really closely, your own immune system actually becomes suppressed. So you literally have more problems defending within the environment we live in than without these kinds of things. Now, this stuff has actually been substantiated by pretty significant studies, epidemiology studies over the last few years. And so we know for sure it's statistically significant that when you have these kinds of things close to you, there is a clear increase in potential cancers to the body as a result of these exposures.
Yeah, we're actually have your book open here, and we know that you talk about different like health risks that come along with EMFs, and cancer being one of them. But and there's a lot of research done on all of this about exposure, EMF exposure linked to asthma and autism and cell changes and genetic damage and cancers and brain cancers, breast cancer, all of it. And it's very interesting. It's like fertility, reproductive issues. It's very interesting. It's like, have these things been proven, or is it just or like how far has the research gone to prove some of these things?
There are, in research, you have to be statistically significant.
Yeah.
And so when I referred to the epidemiology studies, what we found was that exposures from emissions can cause two forms of cancer. The first is frontal lobe cancer, brain cancer, and the other is heart cancers. And there was statistically significant bodies of evidence to suggest that identified that it will increase. That was substantiated by the federal government. They spent $25 million in the National Toxicity Program, and the results were that. And then there was a Ramazzani study, which happened in Italy. It's a consortium of countries, and they did the same epidemiology study and found the same results. So there's those kinds of important stuff that's going on. But we also know that ADHD, learning problems with children, Alzheimer's even has been linked with many studies to being damaged from exposures. And we know that the problem with some of these things and why there's still a controversy is because there's not 10 to 15,000 people in the study. It doesn't make it statistically significant when they get the results. Let me explain that to you. If I was going to prove that you have a direct link to cancer, I would take, and you were a child, I would take 10,000 children, I'd lock them in a room, and then take another 10,000 children and lock them into a room and radiate the one population and not the other and watch who dies. That would be statistically significant study of the impacts of these kinds of things. That's why we don't really have significant data. This stuff's not been around for more than 5-10 years. I mean, 10 years ago, did you have a cell phone in your pocket? Did you put a cell phone in your bra?
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't around us. So all of a sudden, it's now around us. And because of that, we're beginning to learn more and more through studies. But the controversy will exist probably for another 10 years before we really have clear evidence within the public community of acceptance. And by the way, that occurs when the factions lose in court, which is actually happening right now in certain parts of the world about exposures and the links to cancers.
Right.
So interesting.
When you say lock kids in and see which ones die, you're also like, well, that's probably the study hasn't been done.
Exactly.
Right.
Oh, geez. I know. Well, but it is interesting just looking at the research that they have done and the links that they have been able to prove. And then you kind of look at it on a macro level and just in our society, how much reproductive and fertility problems we have now that we didn't used to have. And same with cancers. Cancers were not at the rate that they are now. And so many other issues like insomnia, people just didn't deal with this in the way that they are now. Now everybody knows somebody that's got diagnosed with cancer or one of these things. And you can look at the numbers and see how it's progressed and how it's increased. And so you can just kind of look at all of these links and make your own conclusions, but it makes so much sense, that this is really making a big impact.
Yeah, it's funny. Here's two sides of a coin. There was a study done on brain cancers, and it was over a 10-year period. And it said that there were no, on the average, increase in cancers. Then there was another view, and it said there's been in frontal lobe cancer 2% growth per year for the last 10 years. So the frontal lobe is the part of the brain that's actually impacted by the cell phone. When you put it to your head, it's hitting the frontal lobe. And so 2% per year over the last 10 years. As you point out, there's clear evidence of trending that's occurring. The problem with trending sometimes is that you can't substantiate the claim of the source. But there's more and more evidence that's showing that this is happening. So in the meantime, I think if you should think about protecting yourself, particularly 2% of women that have cell phone laptops in their lap for extended period of time can get tumor. Of that, a small percent becomes cancerous. Just like the male, who has 25% of the male sperm is immobile after 3 to 4 hours. Long-term impacts are now being felt, as you just said. This fertility is going down, and part of the reason could be these kinds of breakdowns of the body in the presence of these emissions.
Wait, can we go back to that 25% of sperm count is immobile after 3 hours? Is that having it in a computer in your lap after 3 hours?
Yeah.
Oh
right,
my
exactly.
gosh.
Oh my
Wow.
That's actually what triggered me to build something to protect my sons. Was when I realized we knew that in research, yet everyone was walking around putting their laptops for hours and hours and hours. And it was legitimately true. After 3 to 4 hours, on the average, 25% of the male sperm is immobile.
That's wild.
Of course, yeah, it's like crazy stuff.
Yeah, that's
wow.
That is crazy stuff.
That is nuts. And then as we're kind of like talking about the different devices, what about the wireless earbuds and headphones? Because that's a big one that everybody's using now.
Oh, that's a great question. And I'll talk about it in terms of from worst to best.
Okay.
When you have a cell phone and you put it to your head, 1.6 watts per kilogram go into your head. If you're an adult male that's 6 foot, it can go in approximately an inch. And it can heat up that surface area by about 2 degrees. If you're a 6-year-old child, it can go right through your head.
Oh.
In other words, if you have children and you're letting them use their phone for a while at a time, there's not only a thermal impact, but there's the biological impact. As I said before, when we talk about cancers of the brain, frontal lobe cancers, that's a biological impact. So when you have a cell phone to your head and you're adult, 1 inch, a child 6, completely through their head.
Wow.
If you want to put a bit more protection in your in the use of the technology, you can actually get and plug in your earbuds, and you have little wires running up your head. And so, is that good? Well, it's better than putting a cell phone to your head, that's for sure. But believe it or not, there's electromagnetic radiation coming off those wires. It's a very, very low power level, but it's legitimately true that there is emissions coming through. In between that, you have Bluetooth stuff going on. People are putting Bluetooth in their ears. And so for the record, Bluetooth power levels are 0.3 watts per kilogram. So it's not a lot, but it is existing. Why do I tell you that? Because if you are concussed, if you you beat your head against the wall one day and you had a concussion, your blood-brain barrier breaks down a bit, 0.2 watts per kilogram can actually damage the cell of the brain. And so even though it's extremely, extremely low, research shows it can be damaging. So you have connected to your head, you have Bluetooth, you have the wire. Of course, the best thing to do is keep it away from you. Believe it or not, keeping it away from you just by a little bit, you're really protected. So here's a rule of thumb. If it's directly to your head, that's where there's the potential 100% danger to the head. If you have it 1 foot away, 80% of that potential danger is gone. By 4 foot, 98 or more percent is gone. In other words, keeping it away from you a little bit from all these devices around us, you get pretty safe pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's amazing.
So
okay,
keep it away from you.
Yeah.
And don't put it in your bras. Women have been, putting conveniently in the bras, and we know through research that some of the damage to the breasts is directly correlated to where they put the cell in their bra and where the transmitters were off the cell phone. So you don't want to do that. You definitely don't want to. And if you're a young woman, do not put it in your pocket, in your pants. Do you know, some researchers say that. I don't necessarily believe this. I don't think there's enough research to suggest it's true. But if you put your cell phone in your pocket, in your 12-year-old girl, and the cell of the egg has DNA damaged cells, she can transfer that DNA damaged cell, that mutated cell, to her subtending generations. And there's this.
Makes sense.
And so you really don't want this stuff in your pocket, in your pants pocket particularly, because it does have potential impacts to the womb of the child.
Wow. Yeah, we just don't even know how far this is going at this point. So that's interesting. Wow.
Well, here's a fact. A recent study out in San Francisco, by the way, out way in your neck of the woods. If you were you just got pregnant and you were in the first trimester, and you were exposed, you had cell phones and laptops in your lap, you would be, if it's a high exposure, you're 3 times more likely to have a miscarriage. So,
oh my gosh.
Particularly if you're having a child, keep these devices away from you. This research was just recently done a few years ago out of San Francisco. What they did was they gave all these women a meter to measure the elevated measurements of electromagnetic radiation within their environment. And that what they found was if it was a high level of radiation, they were 3 times more likely to have a miscarriage.
Oh my gosh.
Jeez. Wow.
I'm just starting to think businesses and, huge companies should be, people can't always be away from their laptops. So they need things that actually protect them. And all of these businesses should provide things for people to be protected. And just everyone in general should be really, really aware of what needs to be protected in your area. If your laptop's near you, you got to get something to put it on or a cover to there's got to be something where because I feel like the technology isn't going to go away. It's just we have to, like, it's unfortunate that, like, as the consumer, we have to be the ones who learn about this kind of the hard way. And it's not really, given to us by somebody who sells us a computer, but it's also, it is what it is. And I think we just have to learn how to protect ourselves through all of it.
Right.
It's like wild.
Oh, yeah. No question about it. And remember that cardinal rule. The distance is your friend.
The distance is your friend. Cool.
Yeah.
And there's a corollary.
That's big.
And there's a corollary to that. I like to talk about the transmitters in a room as bees. One bee won't kill you. 1,000 will. So a very simple rule: turn off every bee in the room if you don't need it. When you have a cell phone in your hand and it's transmitting, it can have Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and the cell connection. 3 different bees being transmitted out of that cell phone. Do you need the Bluetooth? Do you need the Wi-Fi? Probably not. You probably only want the cell connection. And so turn the other devices off because you're not using them, and put the cell phone farther away from you, and you're perfectly fine. You've taken 3 bees in a room and you made it to 1, and you've moved it away so you're more safe. This is particularly true at night, right? At night, you want your router, for example, on a timer, where you can take that and your router turns off automatically, and in the morning it turns on. And so you're reducing the emissions within your own environment just by using simple rules. If you have a Roku or a television device that works on Wi-Fi, they also work with Ethernet. Get a wire, plug it in the back of the device, TV device, and run it to your router, and eliminate the transmitting Roku or whatever the device that's controlling your television. Simple little things can actually protect you a bunch. One of the things you were saying before, we've talked about electromagnetic radiation and the forms we've described during this chat we're having. One thing I have not talked about, but is probably very important, and I'll tell it through a story. I work with neurologists, ophthalmologists, biochemists. I work with a bunch of the medical community trying to get a better understanding of the impacts to the body. They had a person in their office that had dry eye all the time, and her eyes were always bloodshot. And it also turns out she was always working on the computer at the office. And so for 10 years, they've been giving this young lady eye drops to relieve the pain. And I said, you realize that the screen itself, a colored screen on any of the devices we talk about, they generate color towards the light. And one part of that color spectrum is the blue light component, which is the highest power level within the spectrum. And that is electromagnetic radiation. And when you're looking at a screen and it's hitting your eye, it's disrupting the retina. And there's a whole raft of other things that occurs as a result of the premature macular degeneration. But dry eye is one of them. And so I sent him a pair of blue light blocking glasses, and her eyes cleaned up right away. So for
oh my gosh. Wow.
That's crazy.
Woman, yeah, it's nuts. She was being misdiagnosed. It was the technology around her that was actually impacting her health, and they didn't even realize it. And these are physicians.
Right.
That is so interesting. Yeah, I'm sure there's so many different things that are getting misdiagnosed that are actually from the EMFs, like we've been talking about. I have so many friends that have had miscarriages or have trouble getting pregnant, and just all of the things we've talked about. And a lot of times people can't figure out, why these things are happening. Like, why are my eyes dry? Why is this happening? It doesn't make sense. They are not finding any answers. So this is really interesting. Yeah.
We were talking about protect your womb as a young girl. I wrote Radiation Nation with my son, and one of the people who read it was probably the most well-known radiologist in the country, if not one of the very first. Brilliant, brilliant man. And in radiology, they deal with higher frequency stuff. And in the book, as you pointed out, we do talk about damage to the cell. And he called and he said, I can't believe that energy level can do that kind of damage, and you have all that research backed. And I said, yeah, there's no question about it. And then about a year later, a young woman had a child that immediately passed away. And she had many, many different, very, very rare mutations or DNA damaged cells that created mutations. And he said, I can't explain it except the way you do. And so he began seeing, like you were just saying, that there's more and more evidence that we're seeing the impact of these technologies and we don't even realize it.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
This is kind of, I feel like this is going to be very eye-opening for a lot of people. And to me, it's kind of like there's no fear about it. It's like, just how do we like, what's the best ways to kind of just mitigate all of this, right? And I think it's also kind of like, are there any other things in the house specifically that people should be watching out for? Like, I know we were talking about putting your Wi-Fi on a timer, putting your cell phone away from you, but also is it like, should we be unplugging the toasters and like all of the other appliances in the house that we should, is that a big thing too?
Yeah, there are things you can do. But I really like what you just said. We're not to run and flee. On the other hand, when we're not victims either, we can take actions and we can reduce the environmental exposures that are disrupting our bodies, the stress that is occurring in our bodies, simply by doing simple practice stuff. So to answer your question, most of the stuff's got to operate to actually produce something. So all things you plug into the wall, you're fine. However, things that you can do that we haven't talked about is when you have a laptop, don't use the Wi-Fi. Get an Ethernet connection. I have my laptop, my portable laptop on Ethernet. I do not have. I'm not looking at the screen. I'm looking at a very large screen that has very, very low emissions, and it's over a foot away from me. If you're going to use a laptop, don't put it in your lap. Just put it on your desk. Just keep it away from you a little bit. There are really simple rules. Turn it off if you don't need it. If you're going to use it, keep it farther away from you, and you're probably going to be okay. If you have smart meters, that's a big deal these days. The power supply companies have been authorized to go in, take your conventional analog meters out and put these digital meters where they can transmit a cell phone transmission to a remote device so they don't have to go read your meter. And people are panicking about that, right? And it's serious, but it's another bee in the room. If that bee is on the garage door and you have 2 cars between you and your bedroom, don't worry about it. It's perfectly fine. The distances keeps you safe. If it's on the wall right outside your bedroom, move your bedroom because that's potentially dangerous.
Okay. That makes sense. And then you mentioned about the study with the pregnant women that they had a device to measure their levels. Do you recommend people measuring their levels? Do you guys have a device that does that? Or how do you feel about that?
That's a very good question. When you get a meter and you see a meter start bouncing up and down, you're going to start panicking. Oh my goodness, look at that bouncing up and down. And honestly, no meter you have that you buy for your home is accurate to tell you really anything definitively. So my coaching is always, you don't go to that extreme. You just make sure you spend the time thinking about where the sources are within your own environment, minimize them, and you've taken care of everything you can. Having a meter saying you have a problem doesn't really help you solve the problem. It just simply substantiates what you may already know if you've done your management around your house.
Got it. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And then as far as the products to help us, you guys have so many incredible ones. We actually ordered some that are on the way that we're about to try. I got the blue blocking glasses, and then Tara got the Defender Pad Laptop Shield. So we're excited to try that. But is there anything else that you suggest? Like, I've seen those stickers for the phones and some other things like that. Is there anything else that you suggest as kind of like a first step for people to use?
Let me put it this way. You don't have to buy anything we have. And if you manage your environment clearly, you can be safe.
Okay.
So I always try to preface by saying, if you manage your environment, you can minimize those exposures. And that's what I always suggest first. But I tell you something, I never used a cell phone. I wouldn't put it next to my body. But when I tell you what happened. I was designing a protection for a cell phone. Mm-hmm. And there was a story that was in the paper about a 6-year-old girl that the parents bought a cell phone for. She kept on asking, please give me the cell phone. They got her phone. 1 year later, she died of frontal lobe cancer. And I was really, really disturbed because I knew that if she took simple precaution, that wouldn't have happened. And they believe that was the reason and cause. We'll never know. Wow. But it's precautionary, right? It's telling you sort of be careful with this stuff. And I use my cell phone all the time now because the omnidirectional signal is being blocked in the direction of my body. And, I'm safe.
Yeah. It's just like, make sure that you're taking the precautions and you're safe and you're good.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Right. Don't put your cell phone next to your baby in the crib. Don't put it in the stroller. To keep it away, and it's fine. It's simple little actions you can take to bring protection to your family and to yourself.
I love it. So helpful.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, because I think people can sometimes get a little bit overwhelmed. Like, I've spent so many hours, researching all this stuff and looking on Amazon for all of these stickers and all of these things and knowing, what to do and what not to do. So this is just so helpful.
Yeah, I don't particularly believe in those stickers and other things that may be on the market. What I really like to suggest to everyone, if you're going to buy a product, why don't you take a look at the study work, who's ever selling this, that is an independent substantiation of the claim. In other words, I didn't test my products. Of course I did, but I did not advertise my tests. I went to an independent FCC laboratory, and I said, "Test what I did and tell me what my performances are." And that's what you see in our website and Amazon and everywhere we sell. You want some independent study that says this is what it does, and this is what you can expect if you buy it.
Right.
It's very simple. Very simple. Look for independent research that says it's safe.
Okay. Very cool. I love it. I think I would just kind of love to circle back to where we first started with the 5G, just to like go into that just a little bit, because I think it's such a hot topic right now and people don't really know what to make of it. And I've been doing some of my own research into it, but it's still a little unclear to me. Like, why is it? I know you mentioned that it was there was no like studies done on it. And is that why people are kind of concerned about it? Or is there something else that you know? Okay. It's just not been studied.
let's talk about this.
Yeah.
To answer the question you just asked, remember what I said. The FCC is a standard that was created up to 4G, by the way, roughly. It was actually over 30 years ago that it was created, and it was created on a G1, 1G, which was an analog signal. An analog signal means it's a constant load being transmitted out. And then 2G was where they digitized the signal and they turned it on and off, and they transmit it to the other end, and you can hear somebody, but it's a digital signal traveling between each other. Think of it this way: when you have a 10,000 pounds on a piece of steel, and you put it on a piece of concrete underneath it, and you keep a constant load on a piece of concrete, the concrete won't break. But if I lift it and drop it off, lift it and drop it, lift it and drop it, the concrete breaks. In other words, a pulsing signal is more dangerous than a constant load. And so the standard was on a constant load, not a digital signal. And so it's a jackhammer-like function to the cell of your body. So that's what's causing almost all of the biological impacts of the use of all these technologies around us. Fast forward with, by the way, it goes up to, remember we talked about 2.3 gigahertz was the microwave level? That's about up to 4G, right? Well, 5G is from there around 2 to 300 gigahertz. By the way, what is a gigahertz? A hertz is one cycle in 1 second. In other words, think of it in your brain, you have a wave going by, and every second it goes by, one wave goes by. That's one cycle per second. When you have 2.3 gigahertz, you have 2.3 billion cycles in 1 second going by. And so you're going from 2 billion cycles to as much as 300 billion cycles. So the speeds are much, much, much faster. They allow much, much more data to be transferred. But on the other hand, there's characteristics of it that may potentially make it more dangerous. What could they be? Well, we talked about the digital pulsing signal as being one of the contributing factors to the breakdown of the cell. It turns out that with 5G, there's two pulsing signals. They call it MIMO, multiple in, multiple out. So you have these multiple signals of digital signals traveling in the air, and now that can hit you. It's also true because they're really, really, really fast. Where I mentioned the cell phone can go 4 to 5 miles before, right? Well, it turns out that cell phone, your 5G can only go 750 feet. So you're going to have a cell tower 750 feet at a minimum to your house where you live to get 5G service.
So all of a sudden, wow. Sorry.
Yeah, you're going to have a cell tower 750 feet or less. And the power levels of those are higher than the stuff you have in your house. Why is that important? If you live next to a cell tower, within 1,000 feet of a cell tower, you're 3 times more likely to have cancer in general. So now all of these things are being next to us. It's also true, as you just pointed out, there is no study work whatsoever on anything between 2 and 300 gigahertz. But here's something I know. When in war and crowd control, there's this gun that's used, and you can't see it, but you can feel it. They shoot a ray at you, and it's a device that is pushing you back. It's breaking up the crowd. All right, that's 90 gigahertz. 90 gigahertz.
I just choked a little. Oh, jeez. It's like, oh my God. Wow.
It's 90 gigahertz, and your sweat glands are like helical, and so your whole body's full of sweat glands. At 90 gigahertz, you are attracting 90 gigahertz signal. And you know how when they disperse the crowd control, everyone's panicking because they're getting really, really hot? That's because at 90 gigahertz, the body absorbs the signal more so than at other frequency rates. So
interesting.
We know that it's used in war at power levels that are higher.
Holy.
And what I said to you before is the power levels aren't necessarily that important. Even the lowest of power levels can actually penetrate the body. And I'll tell you why, by the way, as a side note. The body can protect you from a bomb blowing up in front of you to some extent. But the stuff that's really, really low power stuff sneaks into your body. So that's sort of a characteristic of the technology we have around us. And 5G is going to be one of those that we know no study work's been done on the human body and its impact. But we also know that there's actually some stuff that we know can be affected depending on the speed of the signal. I'll tell you a story. We haven't talked about this, and I know 20% of your listening audience has electromagnetic hypersensitivity. They can tell that something's in the room because their hand hurts, their eyes hurt, they get headaches. There's a lot of symptoms that occur just by exposures, and it's called electromagnetic hypersensitivity. I work with a neurologist, and he on a Saturday morning called me up. He was out in California actually, and he said my head is really, really hurting. I'm near some technology somewhere, and I asked him what had happened. He just moved into his new a small house, and they had installed a service, a cable service. Guess what? It was a 5G cable service. It turns out he went and I said, go look at what the technology is that they're using to provide the service to you, cable service. He turned the router over and it said 5G. And I said, turn it off and see what happens. Within 2 hours, all of his headaches went away. So the other concern I have is that when you go to these higher frequencies, a world we have much less knowledge of, we're actually going to see more of these kinds of sensitivities from the population. And we know today that 20% of the entire population is sensitive, hypersensitive to these electronics. Of that, 80% of women.
Whoa!
Why
oh
women?
My gosh!
Well, yeah.
80% of the women. Almost all. It's almost always women who are exposed and can feel the exposures.
Sensitive women.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow. This is really.
It's not insensitive men. It's just sensitive women.
Yeah. Of course.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, this is so enlightening. Yeah, it's funny because we see that Dave Asbury wrote the foreword of your book, and we haven't connected with him, but our friend Luke Story connects with him a lot. And we just saw that Luke's Story moved because he found that there was a cell tower right by his house, and he was feeling really affected by it. So it's just interesting to kind of see and watch out for these things. Is there any other symptoms that people should be looking out for beyond like headaches, and for people that aren't part of that 20% that maybe can't feel it?
And actually, most of us can't feel it. You won't know the exposure. You don't know you're being exposed. You can't feel it. There's nothing about it in your body. In contrast, Better Call Saul, the movie, show, TV.
Uh-huh.
There was this attorney that had aluminum foil around his head, and when he went outside because he was being attacked. That is electromagnetic hypersensitivity. I actually have known people, particularly a woman that I used to work with, and she couldn't go out of the house. It was that bad for her. So most of us are not that bad, but it can become extreme. And for those who don't feel it, you can be exposed. The damage can be occurring, and you would never know it.
Wow. Okay. So it's always just good to be taking precaution because it's really affecting us no matter what, no matter if you can feel it or not. So It's just being preventative again here. So,
right. Simple
yeah.
things.
Simple things. And it's just sort of learning it and implementing it and making it a new habit and way of life. And it's like no big deal. Right.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly the way I see it. Yes.
Right. And then just being aware of where the cell towers are these days.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
because that's kind of crazy. There's going to be so many more with the 5G, and that it has so much more power, and there's so much more of them. So I can see why people are kind of freaking out about it, because no one's done any studies, and there's more towers, and it's all this stuff, and we're not really totally aware of what's going to happen. So it's a lot of fear, I feel, but it's I think things that you can also really be. There's the simple steps we've talked about, like you stay away from the cell towers, and you keep your house like is clean, if you will, from the electromagnetic fields as possible.
Yeah, so, and I really like the timer on the Wi-Fi, because most nights I just unplug it, but sometimes I forget, and so I haven't thought of doing it on a timer. So I think some of these tips that you've shared are just really helpful to make it a lot easier.
It's funny. I was chatting with someone like you in a podcast once, and the lady was being very, very nice to me. I said, get every piece of technology out of your bedroom. You'll sleep better. And I put it on a timer. Never have anything in your bedroom, ever. And she was being very pleasant and very nice, not believing one word I was saying. She called back about a month later, and she said, please come back on my podcast. I can't believe I'm sleeping at night. That stuff I had around me was screwing around with the melatonin. As you said, I had problems sleeping, and both my husband and I now have full night's sleep. When we removed the technology, it became a better environment for us completely. So it's simple things you can do really have profound impacts to the body. It stressed less. It's like chemical sensitivity or any other environmental kind of thing. It's a toxin in our environment. That's all it is.
Okay. Yeah. That's it. So we just got to, protect and clean it out as best we can.
Right. And then don't worry about it.
Yeah. And still enjoy technology.
Right.
You can't hide under a rock.
No.
Right, exactly.
All right. So we would, this has been so fun. I feel like we could talk for hours about all of this, because you're just so full of knowledge about everything going on with EMFs. And we really appreciate you sharing everything that you have with our audience, and with us too, of course. And so we have 2 questions that we love to ask everyone that comes on the elevator. And the first is, what is your favorite way to elevate yourself? Because this is the elevator.
Believe it or not, it's sort of pretty simple. You can get stressed out in daily life, and you can let a lot of things bother you. I've learned that so much of the things we worry about really aren't something to worry about. And in fact, the real coaching is, if you're on your deathbed, your podcast won't matter. Your work that you do won't matter. Your new car you bought, the new shoes you bought, none of those things matter. The only things that truly matter in life are your friends and family. So you may want to think about keeping stress out of your life, which helps your health, and nothing is worth worrying about by and large except friends and family.
I love that mindset. So powerful. And then you almost kind of already answered it, but our last question is, if you had one message to share with the world, what would that be? So if you have anything to add, but I loved that message.
Well, yeah, you're the architect of your own destiny. If you want to change your work habits, if you want to change your personal characteristics, you control it. You control your environment. So bottom line is, you control, as the architect, where you go.
I love it. I feel like, it's so fun and cool to see people who are like you, who are creating these amazing things for the planet and to help people live a better experience here on the planet. And you have the mindset of that, you've got to create whatever you want. And I love that to me, it's like, I see really people that are creating these really big things, and almost all of them have that mindset of understanding that you are actually the creator of all of it and it's not anyone else. And so really appreciate that. And thank you for sharing.
No problem at all.
Yeah.
Nope.
Well, thank you so much. I love it. I guess the last question we have for you is, where can people find you, Daniel?
We have our Radiation Nation, and a whole bunch of other products for laptops, tablets, cell phones, carrying cases, security cases, blankets, glasses, all forms of body protection. All can be found in our website called DefenderShield.com. DefenderShield.com is a place where you can find just about anything you need to find personal protection from the environment around you. So DefenderShield.com. And did we give you a coupon code that your listening audience can use?
I don't think so, but we'd love to get that, and we can put the website link and any code that you have in the show notes for our listeners.
Yeah, we definitely will. Yeah, apologize. I normally try to do that beforehand, but we will definitely give a coupon code and offer that to your listening audience.
Perfect.
Oh, thank you so much,
Daniel.
So generous.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for everything you shared. We loved connecting with you, and this has just been so enlightening and so important for us all to really hear and become educated on. So we can't thank you enough.
Well, thanks so much for inviting me. I really do appreciate it.
That was awesome.
Epic. Life-changing.
Right? There's so many things to implement, and just a lot of knowledge sharing there, and really upping the awareness game around EMFs.
So true. Yeah. Knowledge bombs dropped, and it's just something that's so cool to dive into a little bit more, because I think a lot of us hear about this stuff, but don't really have the full education or don't have enough inspiration to actually take inspired actions to, implement this stuff and make changes. And like you said, create new habits. So hope this helped you guys to do that.
So great. Let's go into some lobby talk.
It's time for lobby talk.
So there's a lot coming up on our end, but in our own personal lives, there's been some interesting things going on, just sort of mindset things, I would say. And I personally have been really working on living in the 5D. So the fifth dimension, the dimension where everything lives, all the possibilities, all the opportunities, everything is available. And so I've been really kind of in this space of letting myself be limitless and letting unlimited thoughts and things come into my mind, that everything is possible, and really creating and manifesting my existence here on the planet, and using my words to do that, and always creating whatever I want in terms of and actually saying it and stating it from the past, like it had already happened. Like, this podcast was the best podcast we've ever done. And, it had the biggest impact, and all of whatever I want, like, I talk about it out loud as it's already happened. And then I can feel it really deeply. And I do it for unlimited big things that feel almost too big for me. And I just been practicing it, and I'm really training my mind to live in this space. And I'm finding that I'm actually catching myself when I'm not speaking something that I want, or I'm not speaking about something from the past. I reframe it. So whatever I want already happened, even if it hasn't happened yet. So then it happens.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense? Because it works.
Well, it's the law of attraction.
Yeah.
So it's very powerful. And yeah, it's so fun to play with these things. We actually talked a lot about the 5D and kind of breaking out of the matrix in our spiritual concept live that we did in 528 Academy. And it was cool because we pulled from a Yogi Bhajan lecture that was talking all about complexes. And he was talking about, the way to get out of these limitations that the 3D or kind of like limited society or energy that we may be living in, and a lot of the population is living in, is really coming from complexes that we have about ourselves. So, if you're relating to yourself as anything physical, whether it be from the color of your hair to the color of your skin, or anything that you're really relating to yourself on that's separating yourself from others, that's separating yourself from being this energetic, spiritual being that can co-create and is co-creating at every moment your next reality, then, that is limiting yourself. So any way that we can create and do this in a more powerful way, in a more limitless way, and any ways that we can connect to our spiritual, energetic existence more and less to the limitations of the physical and any societal ideas that we have, the more our life will flourish, the more expansive our life will be. So it's cool. And to practice this stuff on the day-to-day really makes a big impact. And I feel like for us, going to the Abraham Hicks was a really cool reminder and just a lot of cool inspiration around the law of attraction and just really bringing it into your speech in a bigger way, into your lives in a bigger way. And so we love it. We love it. We can't get enough.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
It's really fun. Really fun to play around with and like watch it actually happen in bigger ways.
Yeah. And if it's new to you, if you're new to law of attraction, then just start playing with it. Like the more that you do it with little things, the more you'll believe it, and the bigger things you'll be able to do it with, and the better you'll get at it, the more you'll catch yourself. And so yeah, it's just a domino effect. But when you really start to understand that there's no point in thinking about anything that you don't want unless you're going in to do some healing work to release it, then you never will. Yeah, you'll always be thinking about what you want and realizing that that is the only way to live.
Yeah, it is.
The best
and everything
way.
else, all of this stuff, all the limitations and stuff start to fall away when you start to train yourself to only focus on what you want and speak about what you want.
Speak about what you want and take action on what you want before you think you're ready for it. That's the thing. It's like you're creating the future now. So what would you be doing now if that future was already in existence, or if it was right here and about to happen? And that's how it happens. Yeah. And I've seen it in my life in the biggest ways and the smallest ways, and it's freaking cool. But you just do it. Just start to take action, even if it's the babiest of steps. Like, what would you do if you were in the process of buying that home? What would you be doing right now? Who would you be calling? What type of things would you be thinking about? What would you be planning? Whatever it is that you want, get into the energy of that now.
And speak about it like it's happening.
Yes.
So, if you want a bigger house or something, you speak about like, it was so cool. This house that was, 5,000 square feet and the most perfect view, and every little thing that you're listing out that you wanted came to me so easily, and it closed escrow so fast, and we were able to pay cash. And, however you want the thing to go, you say it out loud, and then it happens because you're creating it. Right. So, and then you start acting like, oh, I have a 5,000 square foot house. And what do I act like? And how do I speak when I have that already?
And then you take the action. Like, I literally got a realtor to find our house way before, literally, I knew anything else about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't tell the realtor that. I told the realtor I was looking to buy a house. And I went out and we looked at all these houses.
Mm-hmm.
And it came a year or a year and a half later. There doesn't have to be any time limit on anything. Nothing has to take a certain amount of time. But for the bigger things, you need more energy.
Yes.
So the more that you can take the baby steps and get in the energy now and early and before, the better and the faster it will come.
Exactly. Because now you're learning to organize all the resources and the energy that you need for the bigger thing. You guys, we can talk about this for a long time, but it's
so
it's cool. It's fun. It's fun. And I think we'll probably do a whole podcast on the law of attraction.
Yes.
And really kind of dive into all of it because there's a deeper way to talk about it. And sometimes I think, there's a lot of talk about law of attraction, but I know that it takes multiple sources and different ways of explaining it to finally have it click for a lot of people. So we'd love to explain it from our point of view to be one of those sources that helps it click into your brain.
So true. So if you want us to do a whole podcast on this, let us know.
Yeah.
Reach out to us, tag us on Instagram, let us know. But, it's really important for us to become more powerful and to really be intentional and more conscious with what we're creating every day. And it's important for us, for all of you guys and more people on the planet, especially our community, to be doing the same and to really get out of the lack, get out of the fear, bring in more love, bring in more abundance, and step out of these limitations to start to really create beauty on the planet and
it's
more
like
and more love.
Beautiful way of stating it, Britt. But it's also like, it's actually time. Like we got to do it.
Well, yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like we got to all step up and really do it now because we're being really called to now. And so we got to let go of some of these limitations. And I'm seeing 333 right in front of me. And it's all the masters and angels are near us as we give you this message here that it is just time.
Yes.
Time to step it up.
And we can always be stepping it up.
Every
no
day.
matter where you're at, no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing.
Because it's all unlimited.
Yes.
No limit. So you guys, we have some cool stuff that's happening.
Yes. So much stuff.
That we're planning a retreat.
Yes.
In Joshua Tree.
In May.
From the 16th to the 18th. It'll be like a long weekend. It will
Save the date.
Yeah, save the date. It'll be over a full moon. And it's going to be super rad.
So this is our Sacred Moon Retreat.
Yes.
And it is going to be absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
It's the Sacred Moon Camp Out.
Yes.
So it's not actually camping in tents. It's cute, shabby chic cabins.
Shabby chic cabins.
So it's kind of like a slumber party.
Yeah.
Spiritual, I don't know, party, like slumber party vibes.
Yeah, all the rooms are shared. It's very minimal, but it's also pretty comfortable in the sense that you're kind of really out in wilderness out there, and you're in the desert, and there is a lot of energy happening. It will be at a retreat center, and it's going to be cool. It's going to be a lot of us kind of camping out there together and spending a lot of time really diving into ourselves and having experiences of ourselves and going really big and expanding and healing a lot and being together as a group and really feeling each other and supporting each other and having a lot of fun. So it'll be the weekend after Mother's Day. So might be a nice fun gift.
So true. And yeah, maybe, invite your friends. Like we really want this to be a huge community gathering. And there's going to be lots of Kundalini yoga, lots of meditation. There'll be workshops. There'll be 3 meals a day, plant-based meals. We're going to just have a lot of fun together. So we will be opening that for you guys to sign up very, very shortly. when we get the link, we'll put it in the show notes. So you can check depending on when you're listening, and look out on Instagram. And, if you're not signed up for our newsletter, make sure to sign up for our newsletter too. We'll put that link in the show notes, and that's where we really announce everything that's happening. So we're excited for that. We really hope you come and join us.
Yeah, we do. And we also have we just came off of our 5-day Raise Your Vibration Challenge. And now we are going into our 21-day Elevate Higher Challenge. And that will start in March.
So we're so excited to go deeper and higher with all of you. And it will actually be a workbook. So it's a physical workbook. You can order it on Amazon or digitally. And then we're going to be going live every single day for 21 days. There's going to be a lot of other great resources. So check out that coming soon as well. And then what else, Tara?
I mean, there's a lot, but I think those are the most important things for you guys to know about right now.
Right?
Right?
Yeah, we have some fun blog posts that we've been working on that are coming out here. Some Ayurvedic recipes. And then we're doing a lot of content on love, especially for February coming up into Valentine's Day, just like all aspects of love. And we're also sharing a lot more meditations. So yeah, look out for so much great stuff coming. And we love you guys so much. Thank you for being the best listeners in the world, and look out for our next podcast episode coming in 2 weeks from now. Definitely go back and listen to old episodes in between. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. And when you do, send us a screenshot to the elevator at elevatetheglobe.com, and we'll send you our magic morning ritual.
All right, you guys. So with that,
may the pure light within you guide your way on. Sat Nam.
Sat Nam.
We love you. Go get your EMF protection on.
Yeah. Head over to DefenderShield.com. Love you.